Hi, good afternoon. I'm the one with the wrong timing after lunch. Okay, thank you for being here and thanks for coming to Singapore. I am actually going to speak about Johor. This is an area that is just across from Singapore. So if you know the second link bridge going up to Malaysia, this is the area that I'm going to talk about. So I'm going to attempt to do a socio-economic valuation of the seagrass in this area. And I'll go into detail in a bit. So ecosystem services, I think everybody knows about, so I'm just going to skip through this very quickly. This is why it's difficult to get an accurate valuation. So my suggestion is to add on another layer to this so that it's not just biological values, but also the socioeconomic values, which have, I think, not been looked at as so much. The photos that you see at the top, wait, where'd the arrow thing go? Oh, here. These photos that you'll see at the top of every picture, these are from this area. I have been living and working there for the last 10 years. And so these are photos of the fishermen in that area. I actually study humans, so I study fishermen and their interactions with the habitat. So I'm not really a seagrass scientist. That's my caveat. So my suggestion is to use the well-being lens to add on to the ecosystem services value, and therefore from there come up with a value for the seagrass. Now the reason why we want to do this is because this area, as with all the others that we've looked at in other presentations, is highly threatened. So this is an area, I'll show you a map later, that lies between Singapore and Malaysia, and there is industrial development on all sides, as well as reclamation, shipyard building, port expansion, you name it, it's there. So the idea is to add on values related to human dependence on the seagrass, and so it provides information related to poverty, livelihoods, upstream and downstream incomes, and so it goes slightly beyond just biological services. So to determine the values, these are suggestions by De Groot and Clifton, that you can look at income that the habitat can generate, prices paid for environmental services, and the cost to replicate services that would otherwise be provided naturally. And of course the opportunity cost of destruction. So these suggestions have come up before, it's just that there has not been a valuation of where we are. So this is an attempt to value the seagrass exactly where we are, and I question really how much it can be applied elsewhere, but it can be used as a reference or a benchmark. So this is the objective of the study. The caveat is that it is still highly undervalued because I still don't have all of the data. Some of it is really hard to get an actual number to, some of it is quite arbitrary, so I'm providing what I do know. And also, again, as I mentioned just now, it would be specifically relevant to where we are given the context and the threats that it faces. The work that was done here is with the youth of Club Alami Mukim Tanjung Kupang. They have a booth outside, and advertising detour. Tomorrow at 10 o'clock, one of our young people will be presenting on their club in LT50. So these young people are trained community researchers, and they have helped immensely with the collection of data for this paper. So this is where we are. This is the Pulai River Estuary. This is, where's the red dot? Oh, there it is. Okay, so this is Sungai Pulai, the Pulai River. This is Singapore, and this is the second link bridge that we crossed to get here this morning. So we live within this area. It's called Mukim Tanjung Kupang, and the seagrass, as published, are these patches. Now, according to the local community, and we've ground truthed it, but this is another paper, we have also found seagrass in this area, there's some under here, and there's seagrass in Marambong Island. So one of our other youth will be presenting a poster on seagrass on this island. It's not been studied before. So this red line shows where the fishermen are fishing. It's all seagrass related areas. They actually do fish beyond this into Indonesia and Singapore, but we only use the data from here. This is the jetty that we focus on that has the most number of fishermen in this area. Next slide. Okay, so there have been past estimates on seagrass area here. So I use the published estimate of 42.6 hectares and add on local fisheries assessments to round it up to 45. Now, I use anthropology in my work, so I view fishermen and local communities as experts, even though they're not actual scientists. And I find that their data is actually very relevant and quite accurate when I compare it to published data, because they are there every day and they've been there all their lives and before. Right, so this is how we did it. We identified the ecosystem services, we calculated the values, and then we added on published values, and then we have an estimated value. Again, I say it's estimated, a lot of the data we don't have. So this is what we've done. This paper actually only focuses on the final figure. There are other papers coming out on how we specifically determined all these other things. But again, none of this has been done before. This has been 10 years in the making of collecting information. So I'll run through really quickly because I don't have much time. Total landing value is the first amount of income that fishermen get when they bring in the fish to jetty. So it's the first sale to the middleman. So that's the landing value. And we calculated it based on that one jetty as a percentage of the rest of the fishermen. So I have figures on total number of fishermen, and then we have an estimate based on percentage, and we worked it out that way. Downstream economic value, I'm losing the dot. Downstream economic value is then taking the landing value, and then there's a multiplier, and you get how much that then generates downstream. So the middleman sells it to the person who might process the fish into fish balls and all of this. So that's all calculated there. Economic input value would be things like the cost of nets, the cost of boats, the cost of engines, the cost of petrol. We calculated that with limitations. So we excluded costs that might be related to fishing beyond the immediate nearshore area. And then we have that figure. Gleaning is really for people who go out and don't use nets. They literally go out and just pick up seafood either for subsistence or if there's extra to sell. This is normally done by the women and the elderly as well as children that come along with them. So this is one of the things under the well-being lens, is to include the usually lost economic value of women, the elderly and children collecting from habitats that are usually not calculated. We also have nature tourism. This tourism is actually done by Club Alami, who's outside. No, actually they're at the back listening to me. And this is existing tourism figures that they have at this point. And recreational fishing, there are quite a lot of people who come in to fish under the Second Link Bridge, as well as rent boats to go out fishing in this area. And they do depend on the Seagrass area for their catch. We also have science and education. This is related to the environmental education work that Club Alami does. So we got the figure from there based on their salaries per year, because they are the ones who go out to teach the public, go into schools to teach them about seagrass in the area. And then research funding. Now this is a very limited figure. There are actually many universities, Singapore and Malaysian, that come into this area to do research. But we only used one figure from one university that has a long-term research project in this area funded by a developer that is building islands right on top of and around the seagrass. So that was, I think, 5 million ringgit it was 2.3 million ringgit over a period of 5 years. So that was the long-term research funding figure that we used here. So all the other smaller funds by students or supervisors we did not include. So this figure could actually be a lot higher. Traditional medicine is a point to consider. People used to collect seahorses in this area, but from the time that we did this work, the local fishermen actually did not allow anybody to collect seahorses because they realized the value, and they did not let anybody, whether they were agencies or Chinese medicine collectors or people just, I don't know, for fun, did not allow them to collect that. So we did not include the seahorse figures. However, some Chinese middlemen came in and started to ask people for sandfish sea cucumbers. So these are also of medicinal value, and over the last 10 years, the demand for that has escalated. So this is actually that figure. So this is the subtotal. Sorry, I'm not clever with this thing. So this is the subtotal in USD as well as ringgit of the locally assessed values. So to that, we added on already published figures for nutrient cycling, primary production, bequest value, and carbon sequestration. So those are figures in published material that I'm sure you're all familiar with. So this is the total value that we got based on all of that. So it's quite a lot per hectare per year. It's 57,000. Now this is huge compared to papers that were actually written on this specific area. But these are either a DIA report, which is only $28.79 per hectare per year, and there is a shoreline blueprint report by IRDA. IRDA is the Iskandar Regional Development Authority, so they sort of manage all of the southern coastline development. And this is the figure that they got, 27,000. So our value is higher because we're including the cost of those incomes that are dependent on the habitats. But again, I still say it's undervalued. These are the things that were not taken into consideration. You can see my co-author here, Siti, she's also there, you know her very well. So we also have coastal protection value. If you take a parallel, Tanjung PI is right next to us, and this is how much they spent on reinforcement of the shoreline because they do not have seagrass anymore. Existence value, this was a study done in Thailand, and they came up with 10.43 million per year. We don't have this value because we did not ask people how much they valued it. So it's perhaps a different value, but something to compare to. Club Alami, since this study was done, has increased their tourism, so the tourism value could be higher. And then there's a whole lot of other ecosystem services, whether it's direct, indirect, or non-use, that we did not get the data for. So the number could actually be a whole lot higher, even though it already looks quite high. Some other things you want to consider is there are proxy values that we could add into consideration, whether it's increased petrol costs because of development blocking the way, direct economic losses, decline in primary productivity, or economic cost from the loss of carbon sequestration because there's dredging happening and there's reclamation that covers up seagrass. So these things were not taken into consideration. So this is why we say that it is still an undervalue, even though it's still quite high. Again, there are other values. If you look at willingness to pay approach, the fishermen were given 3 million in return for the damage to the seagrass, but I did not include this into the equation because the fishermen did not actually get it. It got siphoned off to elsewhere, so there was no point to that. And then there is the overall impact to fishermen because these are, sorry, 2 seconds, because the dollar value that they get from their catch is actually less than the actual value that it means to them because they are poor people. And so getting 100 ringgit, for example, is harder for them, and thus the actual value of this monetary amount is far higher than the 100 ringgit that an urban person who's well off might, put on it. So that's another thing to consider. Income effect, this is just a comparison. If you use a multiplier on the fisheries landing value, this is how much of the income per year that the fishermen depend on, and that's quite high. So this is the conclusion. The value can be a lot higher than what is already published or what is suggested if we include the socio-economic components, but more research really is needed to get a more accurate value. And that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We have time for questions.
Thanks a lot. That was fascinating. I just wonder. I mean, a question like this is particularly relevant for places like Malaysia. Given the amount of population pressures, the developmental pressures about places in places like this, does it ever concern you that the idea of natural capital, including cultural capital within that as well, to some extent has a built-in danger in it? Because particularly when it comes to conservation, people are more and more talking about alternative livelihoods, for instance. As soon as you put a price on something, you commodify things like culture, and it becomes very, very easy for them to enter an exchange market. And given the kind of pressures for development, you will always find someone who will be able to pay that price, and then it doesn't matter what the price is. You will eventually squander that resource.
Yeah, that's really, that's a very important question. But I think what we are trying to do is to show policymakers that there is actually a lot more value to what is there than what they see. Because for the developers who have come in to this place at this point, or just developers in general in Malaysia, they see seagrass as non-existent. They don't see it really. They don't even realize that it's got animals in it. So it's just like how they look at mangroves as swamps. So to be able to show them that there is a value and that it's an undervalue and there's still a lot more research that needs to be done is really just to prod them into thinking that if we allow this development to go on, there either needs to be more compensation or there needs to be more consideration for the long term, because they haven't even reached that level where they understand that. So this is that. So yes, it is dangerous to commodify things like this because somebody's going to have the money to pay for it, but I don't think we've reached the level where people even realize that there's a value. So this is what we're trying to do.
I was just wondering how you separated the value of the fishing landings from the whole estuary from the fishing values that were specific to the seagrass, because you presented it as though it was a value of the fish landings for the seagrass, but your figures show that the seagrass obviously didn't cover the whole estuary. Did you specifically ask the fishermen or find somewhere? I was just wondering whether that value relates to the whole estuary or whether it relates specifically to the seagrass.
So we've been asking fishermen over the last 10 years where they catch their fish most. So while they wander within that map area, most of the areas that they catch are dependent on seagrass areas. So we assume that it's not a very big strait between Malaysia and Singapore. It's 2 kilometers wide at the widest point, and at some of these places only 850 meters you can swim across. So, and on the Singapore side, the seagrass, on our side, the seagrass, beyond the green circles that I showed you, there is seagrass. So that within that red area, there is actually quite a bit of seagrass that may not be published. So we are fairly confident that as long as they're fishing within that area, there is seagrass, and thus it's related to that. They actually do catch fish from further upstream, deeper into the rivers, as well as beyond that area in more open sea. But we know that if they go to those areas, it's a different tool that they're using, so we didn't include those. That's a different set of data.
Okay, thank you very, very much.